Welcome back to Politics on France 24. We're here today to discuss some of the issues around Islam in Europe, and with me today in duplex from Oxford, where he's a professor of Islamic Studies, is Tariq Ramadan. On the set with me is Fouad Al-Obeid, who writes editorial for the Kuwait Times, based in Paris. Also here is Stefan Brendel, who's the Paris correspondent for the Frankfurter Rundschau. And via satellites from Beirut, where she's an associate scholar at the Carnegie Middle East Center, is Amel Boubekeur. So in addition to the debate over the burqa in France, a proposal to ban the full veil has been put forth last week in Italy, but there are also some other issues around Europe. On November 29th, the Swiss will vote on a referendum to decide whether minarets should be banned. The initiative comes from a populist party. All major parties are urging the voters to say no. And in Germany, a debate has erupted after the head of the Turkish community asked that Muslim holiday become a holiday for all school children. Those are only the latest controversy involving visible symbols of Islam in Europe. So, Mr. Brendel, let me ask you about the controversies in Switzerland and in Germany. Are they of the same vein than the one in France about the burqa?
Well, maybe in a general sense they are the same vein, but the formal approach is very different. In Germany, the initiative comes from the Turkish community. The Turks asked for a holiday, which is not a religious which will not be a religious holiday, but a holiday without going to school for the children. And they proposed that it might be at the end of Ramadan, for example. And the thing is that most parties are very split inside themselves. There's not a right, left, but there's among the socialists, there is people who are in favor and against it. But the whole discussion is very political on a high level in newspapers everywhere. Whereas, as in Switzerland, the initiative comes from the citizens and it's against Islam. So it's not by Muslims, but it's against Muslims in a certain way. And this is, in my opinion, very symbolic. The people on the ground, on the base, they are afraid of Islam in Europe. And the political establishment discusses it in Germany, but also in France, in other terms. And in fact, it comes out to the same question: how do we integrate? How do we make people, Muslims, participate? And in Germany, there is one senator, a socialist senator in Berlin, who says the question about this holiday is very delicate because for the first time we have to throw away this argument of secular political opinions as it was put forward in France with the veil, where the French government said it is against secular or laic or laicistic reasons. You can't have the same argument against a Muslim holiday because there is Christian holidays. Okay. So you can't put this argument forward, and actually it comes down to the real question, which is: do we want to give a national holiday to the Muslim community, because they have become very strong now, and finally this question ask for an answer.
Mr. Ramadan, you're claiming that actually behind all those controversy about women garb, separate swimming pools, minarets, Muslims are already part of the Western society much more than people realize. In your latest book, you call upon Muslims to, if I quote you correctly, to normalize their presence without banalizing it. Is this really happening? Is there a quiet revolution, as you say, or are the most visible tensions that we just discussed really there?
No, I would say that deep down, what I have seen in the Muslim communities around the West, and not only in Europe, but around the West, and of course in the West, even in France, that we have been talking about just before that, there is a process here where you have the Muslim men and women, they are becoming citizens and they live, they abide by the law, they speak the language of the country, they are loyal to the country. The point is that their fathers and mothers were completely segregated in ghettos, social ghettos, geographical ghettos, and now the second, third and onward generations are visible. And this visibility, in fact, is just showing that now they are settling down, they are really part of the society. And you know, in what the President Barack Obama was saying in his talk in Cairo, he was talking also to the American society saying Islam is an American phenomenon, Islam is an American religion, and we are not integrating in our minds in Europe that Islam is a European religion now and it's part of the landscape. So the process is there. You have now citizens living and being more visible. The point is that when we speak about the headscarves and then about the burqa and then about the minarets and then we speak about holidays, we are speaking about symbols of visibility, and we are scared of this because in fact the process is there and we are dealing with fears and mistrust. So the populist parties are using these fears just to say, oh, there is here the symbols of the Muslim arrogance by coming and creating or building, minarets. They show that they are now colonizing us. This is what they are saying. So they are using the symbols to target a community and to nurture not only fears but racist and xenophobic sentiments. And this is where we have to be very cautious, to be able to say to the Muslims, you abide by the law. And then, for example, we don't have a problem with holidays, to tell you the truth. We can find our way with what is done now. But the problem even with, we don't know when we agree on the same holidays when it comes to the end of Ramadan. This is a problem among Muslims. So we better solve our problem and then see how we can deal with, local authorities and schools. They give our kids the free day. This is possible. We don't need this kind of artificial controversies. But when it comes to masks and dresses and all these things, it's quite important to be able to say at the same time to the Muslims, we have principles, you abide by the law, and the laws are respecting your freedom of conscience and freedom of worship, but also to say something about the society and to say, look, now you have to deal with this visibility which is part of your country, and to understand that your country has changed with this presence, and not to go towards something which is a hidden, an implicit racism towards Muslims, and by targeting what is the symbols, in fact, to refuse this presence because not only you fear their presence, but you don't like their presence, and you are nurturing a new racism. And this is happening today in Europe, and this is quite scary.
Ms. Boubekeur, do you agree with Mr. Ramadan? I mean, are the Muslims integrating better than we think, or are the problems that are being brought up regularly in different ways across Europe through real ones, and that Mr. Ramadan is maybe downplaying them a little bit?
We have been focused for 30 years on the question of integration, and the result of that is that nothing has changed. So as long as we will focus on this issue of how Muslims should be integrated and someone not realizing first that the majority of Muslims are now European, they are born in Europe, and second, that national situations between France, the UK, Germany, and so on are really, really different. Why the example of the burqa is interesting, and you were asking about racism. The fact that we are calling burqa, which is, as everybody know, the name for the Afghan veil, is revelating in itself. So when we are talking about the veil, we are talking in the majority of time about Muslim women born in Europe that are making this choice, or Muslim men that are making the choice to get integrated or not as European citizens. And I think that the real challenge of Europe now is now to keep on questioning itself if Muslims should be integrated. I mean, they are here. But the question should be, how can we promote equality within this diversity that is a fact? Diversity now in Europe is a fact. How we can promote equality between men and women, between non-veiled women and veiled women, between various confessions and so on. How can we promote equality between these people? And the best way to do it is really to focus on citizenship, is really to focus on issue of common interest. I mean, Islamophobia, for example, that's an issue of common interest, okay? That shouldn't be, I don't agree with Tariq Ramadan here. I don't think that those issues should be discussed only within Muslim communities. On the contrary, they are already public and national debates, and they should be debated nationally by all citizens, Salafi, non-Salafi, Muslim, non-Muslims, men and women, etc.
Okay.
But really, why, I mean, as long as we will ask ourselves about integrating Muslims, I mean, we won't find the response. The real key to all the challenges linked to the presence of Muslims in Europe, it's about equality and diversity.
Okay. Mr. Alobet, you want to jump in? I also want to bring the issue. I mean, we've been mentioning Salafis in Europe, also in the U.S. A lot has been made about the Wahhabi influence abroad, including in European countries, creating those tensions, the Burqa and others. I mean, is this a real threat or a fantasy?
I think the question here, I mean, when you look at all these issues, all the different participants here on your plateau, the question is this. I mean, it's the integration of Islam into European society. And I think if you look at just numerically the number of Muslims that have increased in Europe during the past 50 years, it's been astonishing. You had some 25-fold increases in some countries. Even in France, you've had a massive jump of immigrants that came here. And at first, I think the debate was they were here to help rebuild the country after the devastation of World War II. And after that, they kind of stayed. And now they're here. And as was mentioned earlier on, you have the second, the third generation of Muslim immigrants that are now citizens of Europe that are here to stay. I mean, they are not from the country of their parents' origin. They are European, clearly. And the question is, how does the European governments deal with this new community that has increased in numbers and is drastically increasing? And I think the question, even if you look at the burqa, the minarets, and as well as the holidays, the question of assertion of these now citizens that were previously immigrants and how they interact with their respective countries and governments.
Mr. Ramadan, if I tell you that the previous generation, people were called, maybe in France, especially more, Arabs and so on, they defined themselves, they were not defining themselves as religiously, maybe as they do today. I mean, is this creating a new problem, maybe that there's more Muslim identity than maybe more Arab identity for the previous generation?
I would say that they haven't chosen this. I think that it's coming from the society itself. And the point is that the common ground of all the people who came, from Pakistan, from Turkey, and from North Africa and different countries in Europe, the common ground of all this, they are all Muslims. And we are seeing that there is a growing commitment towards religion. So yesterday they were perceived as Moroccan or Pakistani, and this has changed. But it's not of the business of the people. They are just facing a perception and a representation. And by the way, I never said that these discussions should be only within the community. We have social and socio-economic discussions that are from all the society, and this has to do with governments and social policies. And this is why we need to work. And this is exactly what I was saying, when I was working at the grassroots on the job market in Rotterdam. I was saying that we need an equal policy, a policy of equality towards diversity. This is what we need today. So I would say that the point for us is really to disconnect and to be able to deconstruct the problem and say where we are, which kind of problems we have. We have a problem on religions and interpretation. You were talking about Salafism, for example. And we are facing governments that are not so coherent with this, because when we speak about the burqa in our streets, what are they going to do when princes and kings are coming from Saudi Arabia and other petromonarchies and coming at our borders in France? Are they going to ban them from coming? No, they have the money that let them in. So this is going to happen because we have a problem with our own consistency. So there is a religious problem. We have to tackle that. And there are social problems. And we need now to come with this and to be able to say, let us all together, all the Europeans, face what is coming, and it's very dangerous. It's a new kind of racism. It's targeting the gypsies, it's targeting the Muslims, and who yesterday was a Moroccan, a Pakistani, now is reduced to a religious identity. And this is not acceptable, and the Muslims should not fall into that trap, avoiding the victim mentality, speaking for themselves and struggling for their rights on the job market, on on housing, and not to be trapped in something which is you are a Muslim and only a Muslim. No, I am a citizen and I want to be respected as such.
Mr. Brendel, I guess you want to react. Isn't the branding of people who come from Muslim countries as Muslims, whether by others or by themselves, not making it more difficult for different governments in Europe to deal with the issue? They seem to not to really know what to do. I mean, do you have an opinion on that?
Yeah, it is more difficult, I think, because with a religious question, which is always, but not only with Islam, a very delicate question. I just remind of the religious wars in France in the in the earlier centuries. These are real tough questions, and the cultural background. If you ask that, maybe a former generation was seeing himself more or herself more than an Arab culture, and today more as an Islam culture. This is also the image that Europeans might have. If I take the Swiss example, we have since some decades like more about 4 or 5% Muslims, but they were never called Muslims. They are mostly Bosnians from the former ex-Yugoslavia and Turks. We spoke about Turks, we spoke about Bosnians, Yugoslavians, we never spoke about Islam. Today, with this Minaret initiative, people all of a sudden see the same people on the religious point of view or aspect. And this shows a very clear shift in the understanding also in Europe, not by the people themselves, but also by the Europeans who see them.
Ms. Boubekeur, do you think this is kind of like a self-fulfilling cycle that, you know, the Europeans perceive different Muslims as Muslims and therefore the Muslims themselves perceive more as Muslims? I mean, is this happening, you think?
I think first we have to keep in mind that Muslim communities, plural, are very diverse. I mean, even social statutes are not the same. You have now a new generation who is experiencing social mobility, but you have also a lot of people deprived, who have a lot of social problems and so on. So it's better to speak about or to talk about Muslim communities. That's a one thing. Then I have conducted a survey among Muslim women, Can you hear me?
Yes, we have to go quickly.
Yeah, and on the multiple forms of discrimination that are affecting Muslim women, and they are discriminated not only because they are Muslim, but because, of course, they are Muslim, but also because they are women, because they are young, often also because they are migrants, and because they are poor. So you can see that those problems are not related only to Islam as a religion or Muslim as an identity.
Okay, just a very last word, Mr. Ramadan. Despite all the controversies, are you optimistic in a few words?
Yes, I am, and I think that it's going to be very difficult. We need 2 generations to change mentalities, but what is going on the ground is it's pushing me to be optimistic, and I think that now we have new voices and they will be able to speak for themselves.
Okay, I'm very sorry. We have to leave it at that. Thank you very much for watching this edition of Politics on France 24.